What's up, everybody? This is video number 2 in less than 24 hours because I'm a crazy man. So we're going to work on this tiger, and as I had specified before, definitely sketch loosely and try to have as much fun as possible. Even if you're referencing like an actual animal or something like that, definitely just try to keep it loose and grab as many of the details as you can to translate the image over to where it's readable so you can tell that it's actually a tiger. In this one, I've done hundreds of tigers, so it's kind of just down to my stylized version of one. And I added a third eye, and I wanted it to be, you know, kind of caught up and bound by rope with a little bit of turmoil and fire. So I got pretty quick into doing my really small line work. I use a 0.05 Staedler pen, if I'm not mistaken, and I get all of the lines in essentially to have a pretty concrete stencil that won't wipe off or get messy. And some of the lines will remain in the final product, but I do this first. So I'm getting all of the detail lines in and setting the permanent placement for a lot of the parts of this piece. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, you can kind of double up on some of the lines. You can get a little sloppy if you need to. Don't stress perfection at this point. It's not that crazy. You're looking for the totality of the piece, not to have every little bit be as clean as possible. Because it's handmade and we're not computers, so just try to have fun and don't stress making things too crazy clean. I move pretty fluidly through this, and I'm more worried about, you know, motion and stuff like that. So I erase everything, and then I start getting to my favorite part, is beefing up the lines. So I pull out a super fat Sharpie and I just start going nuts. Sharpie's pretty cool because it's waterproof, and if you work fast enough on the hot press paper that I'm using from Fabriano, you can get pretty cool fat lines, and it doesn't get too messy and it doesn't bleed, and it's pretty consistent. And I'm using a Sharpie that's been worn down pretty well, but still has enough flow to get the ink onto the paper. And it doesn't smear too bad when you go over it with markers too, so it's pretty good. Just try to work quickly with it and put it in the places that matter the most, that you want the lines to be the most heavy. And I'll be going back in with a Micron size 1 felt tip just to get medium lines in there. Then I'll bounce back in with the Staedler pen, size 8, to get some fine lines in there over the really small lines that we threw in there to begin with. And like I said, don't worry about making it super perfect. You know, try to be as clean as possible, but if you make a couple of mistakes or beef up some spots too much, it's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about it. It's really easy to get too caught up on keeping things super, super perfect, and you'll lose sight of the whole piece. So just have fun with it, and don't stress making it razor sharp, crazy clean. Because every piece has its imperfections, and I like that. I like the handmade quality of it. So yeah, I'm doing the size 1 Micron lines on some stuff that I don't want to be as thick as the Sharpie. Putting everything in its place. Adding some little detail lines in those flames. And then the muzzle of the tiger. Now, this is the fun part. In my last video, I showed you that you could use Tombos with the Tombow blender. But another thing that you can do is use the Tombow with a water brush pen that a lot of practitioners of watercolor use. And it's pretty cool because you get nice, really large wash areas And it's fun. It may take a little bit of practice because that can get a little messy. So I try to work in corners and work around so I don't smudge anything up. And once again, that Tombow ink, it's a water-based ink marker. And once you go over it with Prismacolor or Copics, it doesn't move. And that's the same with pretty much every alcohol-based marker that's on the market. So I'm getting my values in using the Tombow. And then I start taking that water brush, which cleans out on its own pretty well. And I take a sepia watercolor tone and I start doing the background. And once again, I can't stress this enough, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm kind of going for a sloppy wash type of look and feel to it. So don't stress it too much. Now's the fun part. I get to start coloring. This is pretty straightforward. You know, I try to do the stuff that has, you know, I try to get the values in where they go. And to not get redundant, I tried to make sure you guys see a good part of this, but I'm not focusing on it super hard on every little bit of the coloring process that I did in here, because you'll get the gist. And a big part of that is fun and having as much of it as possible. And I don't want to keep you too long on this video, because the whole point of these things is to encourage you to go out and make your own. That's why this video is considerably shorter. You know, and don't feel shy about layering stuff up. You know, like I went into the piece with some grays. I went into the piece with, you know, over a lot of different things, and it was a lot of fun. And you'll see me go back in with some other stuff too. I'm going to be using paint markers. And in this case, I'm going to be using a Sumi Wash brush pen to get the tiger stripes in. And it's transparent, so you can layer it because it's an ink wash. And here I use the paint markers to get some of the glares in the eyes in. Using a semi-opaque white, so some of the color shines through. And then I went in with a white gel pen to get some absolute lines, but I ended up not liking the consistency of this one, so I switched over to an extra fine white acrylic paint marker like I'm using now. So I'm just adding some highlights and stuff like that. Some drool in the mouth, some pupils, and some hair effect. And parts that I didn't feel needed to be lined in white, or I mean black rather. A couple of whiskers. And now I did my favorite part here, and that's where I take a black paint marker and I go and I thicken and give more density to some of those lines and isolate certain parts that I feel need to have that attention grabbing aspect in the foreground. I'm not using a whole lot of pressure on these because it comes out pretty fluidly. So I go around and I make my rounds and get everything in there where it needs to be. And not everything needs to be lined in that. I kept one of the ears unlined with that heavy black because I want it to look like it's in the foreground. And I definitely didn't do that to any of the flames in the background because I want them to sit back there where they should be and give the tiger run of the show. Now I'm adding a little white highlight around the tiger itself with that same acrylic paint marker that I used for the drool and other little highlights. Give it a signature, give it my stamp, and now I get to do a cool little sepia tone background to make the paper have a stained look. And I use a can called Tint-it. You can find it at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. And that's the finished piece. I hope you like it. It was a quicker video, but it was a lot of fun to make, and I was very happy to share it as my second video. So tune in next time. Thank you so much, guys.